We need to switch our mindset to change how the fraud operators, how the fraud agents, how the people in these teams are behaving, because we need to replace the operational mindset and the tactical mindset to something more strategical. And AI is needed for that. So instead of wasting time and resources just going back and forth to 20 different places, just click, 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 click. Let's try to guarantee that AI will help us to bring us the data, help us to do the research on our own, by their own. That's just the first step. So switching from something tactical to something strategical.
Jose, great having some time with you this afternoon to discuss what Acoru has been up to. So there's a lot of discussion these days about AI. Can you explain how Acoru developed their system and built it from the ground up with AI?
Well, thanks for the welcoming, Ken. It's a good question because nowadays I think that there is a harder and a deeper problem in the industry. And it's not just about how Acoru is approaching and how Acoru is facing AI. It's about how the world has changed. I mean that most of the AI technologies or most of the software companies were built in a world in which everything was slower, everything was more predictable, AI was not as usable as today. So it is true that they are adding in some way AI on top of already existing systems, which is great. AI could help to make decisions or could help to improve systems, could help to, let's say, bring some recommendations. But at the end, the problem is that they are really just assisting you to something that was already designed with a different purpose, with different tools, with different, let's say, core. And the main difference is that Acoru was designed in an era in which AI is really usable. It's a reality. I mean that, so everything was designed to continue on this. And that's a key shift, because it's not the same to just adapt your system to something new that to build everything from the scratch, counting on these tools, counting on these features.
So let's go a little bit deeper on that with how you can add AI on top of an existing system to make it sound like it's all new and improved and the best. I mean, like you said, there's a big difference between building it from the ground up and then going, just kind of layering an AI on top of something. Do you want to let folks know a little bit about why that doesn't work as well as building from the ground up?
Let me use an analogy that probably will simplify everything. I think that we are all familiar with how we drive. I mean that we all use GPS, modern GPSs, and we need to come up with the reality that happened in the past. So we all had maps, physical maps. So there was someone, let's say, stopping the car and just visualizing where you were, and we need to turn right, we need to turn left, whatever. Then GPS appeared, which was something new, which was mainly someone assisting you to read the map live. But it is true that these GPS were not thought to adapt in real time to what was happening. So if you were driving in a road and there was a traffic accident, you were in the middle of a traffic jam and you were reacting too late. And this is something that is not an option today when we are talking about detecting fraud or detecting scams. They are evolving fast. We need to evolve at least as fast as them. So we need to think in a system that was created, built on the most modern tools like AI. Okay, and why I am saying this? Because we are now kind of working in the same scenario that I was talking before with the analogy with the GPS. So there are many systems, old systems, that were thought on an event-based approach. So they were just worried about how to score this transfer. And they were using some old-fashioned models, tools, and it is true that they are adding AI on top of this. But it's not the same to add AI to help the system than to use AI as a system by itself. So it's not the same to have an assistant helping you to do the map than just use your system, design your system like the modern system, the modern navigation tools that are already adapting, were designed for that and are acting as a brain. So this is the problem or the shift that we are seeing in AI. So AI space needs to be designed counting on these, let's say, perimeters, scenarios, and that's the main and the big difference when you are trying to tackle the fraud. So AI will help all systems, for sure. GPS helped the guys with the map. But AI from the scratch, AI by design, is something completely different. You are not just optimizing the system, but the system is AI by itself.
So Acoru deals with a significant amount of data too, probably more than a lot of device-specific companies. We look at all of the account information. We keep track of that over a period of time. Can you let us know a little bit how AI can really help out with the volume of data and be able to get through that to find the right answers we're looking for?
Well, one thing important is that probably let's try to put on the analyst's shoes. So as you have said, they have tons of data. They need to analyze dozens, hundreds, thousands of alerts, and we are always under pressure. So you need to make decisions in just a few seconds or even less now with the instant payments and so on and so forth. Many times you are making decisions without enough information. Sometimes you are biased in some ways. Sometimes the systems are not scalable enough in order to give you the information that you need in the time that you need in order to make a decision. So sometimes you are blind. Sometimes you just need to jump from one system to another in order to try to speed up the process. And that's mainly because, as we said, these systems were built in different time in which having all this connected together, having all this reacting together, having all this predicting in real time was not possible. Nowadays it's possible. And this is a big difference because it's not just about trying to help analysts viewing things quicker, but it's also trying to use all these AI-based systems to reduce false positives, to try to guarantee that they are focusing on what matters most. So trying to not just generating better alerts or less alerts, but better information. So all this could be done once you decide to go through a system that was on purpose designed content on this. Again, we can use AI to improve false detection rate. We can use AI on all systems to improve many things, but AI at Acoru is how the system works. No, it's something to improve how the system works. It's slightly different.
So let's look at some of those things that help those agents out. We've got the Copilot, and we have the agentic operator, and we have the large account model, the LAM. Can you just talk a little bit about each one of those, what they do for a company, a bank that is one of our customers, and you know, how they operate, and just a little bit of discussion on those?
I think that it's important to understand that there are layers at the end, so AI is really wide, and we need to also accommodate use cases for different purposes. I was talking before about how AI is used on a daily basis and on a fraud analysis day by day. And the first two that you were mentioning, so Copilot and agentic, so I think that we are all familiar nowadays with the Copilot, so it's an assistant, it's helping you, it's guiding you. At the end, it's simplifying the way that you have to do things. So sometimes it's not just that they are replacing us, but they are a tool that will help us to, let's say, not starting from zero when you need to do a research. It's easier to go to someone to ask, like, hey, Copilot, help me finding the patterns among this and that. And it's something that will speed up the things that we do, because if you go through a fraud analysis work, it's something that is repeatable. You are going through the same path once and another, and everything is done manually. So Copilot will help us to not starting from zero when we are researching, not having the need of doing once and another the same things. So at the end, it's trying to switch from the current analyst role, which is almost a reviewer or someone who is always operating the same thing, to something more strategical. So you count on someone else that you need to supervise to guarantee that we have more intelligence. So about agentic, of course, everything related with the assistant, everything related with how we get the data is really important, but it's not the bottleneck at all. The bottleneck is how you, let's say, actionate all this information that you're gathering, because you need to make a decision. In order to make this decision, it is true that sometimes if we count on someone who can, let's say, discover by itself patterns, anomalies, propose rules, propose improvements in the models, or even propose taking actions by itself, it will be great. It's risky at the same time, so you always need to, let's say, supervise, you always need to guarantee that the agentic is under control, but the simplest way that I find to differentiate one from another is that Copilot is your assistant, agentic is, let's say, someone that could work on your behalf, always being supervised by you, but you can rely on him, you know? And finally, you were talking about large account modeling, so LAN. The good part of, let's say, being founded in this area is that we counted on LLMs. We all know that LLMs are really large language models, so they know perfectly well how the language works. So large account modeling is quite similar. So it's something that we are approaching the same logica behind the accounts. Why? Because, again, this is a big shift from where we were detecting fraud, from what's needed in order to really adapt to the ever-evolving fraud landscape, which is most of the old systems, with AI or without AI, they were event-based. They were focusing on transfers. They were focusing on, hey, there is something wrong. Is this fair? Is this legit? Is this fraud? Tell me something. They can count on historical data, they can count on whatever you want, but they are just worried about making a score at one single point in time. Okay? Large account modeling is something with a wider view. So it's an holistic view, it's something counting on not just an event, but a story, fraud story behind this event. So understanding what's behaviors around the account, around the identity behind this account, around the sessions online that this account is having. So putting all this together in a box helps you to understand and to predict what's next in the accounts. So in the same way that when you are in an LLM can predict what's next in terms of words, in the LAM, it can predict what's next in terms of account. And this is great because we move from a scenario in which we are just reactive when identifying this event was fraud. And it's okay. I mean that AI applied to all systems would help you to do this. But it's even better to try to switch to a scenario in which you are predicting what's happening in the account, because you move from a, let's say, just reactive approach to a predictive one. And again, it's a big shift when we are talking about preventing, detecting, and fraud.
Great. So, when we talk about AI like this, you always have to bring up how do you keep the human in control or human in the loop in the decision process so the AI doesn't run off and come up with some crazy stuff or enact things that it shouldn't be doing. How do we make sure of that?
Yeah, I know that this is a fair question, to be honest. There's a risk, of course. I mean that AI has a lot of potential, and we can ask ourselves, are we putting a lot of, let's say, trust on an automatic system? I mean that we are humans. It's not just about fear if they are replacing humans. No, it's just about, let's say, humanity. Like I don't know if the machine at the end is acting as I would expect. But this is not a problem at Acoru at all, because it is true that we are counting on AI. But it is true also that AI system has been built counting on explainability, counting on observability, and first of all, and especially for the agentic part and the large account modeling part, they are proposing what needs to be done. But a human needs to approve that will be done. So there are scenarios in which you can simulate. The agentic can be, let's say, proactive, saying, we can do better and do. I can do this, and that. And this will be the results. So you can also even see what will happen if you approve this kind of decision. And they can just stay waiting for your approval. This is where the human goes into the loop. So they are at the end not replacing humans, but changing how the humans interact through the fraud operation flow. And this is also a way to guarantee that let's say the structure is scalable, because this is one of the problems that we have nowadays. There are tons of scenarios that need to be reviewed. There are many things that could be automatized, and having this agentic, having this copilot, having these large language models helping us would help us to scale how we fight the fraud, you know? And this is not a problem once you audit everything, once you log everything, and once you guarantee that everything is explainable. And this is another key word, explainability, because we are account-centric, which means, as I've said, that let's account models are based on everything surrounding the account. So whenever there is some changes in terms of risk, in terms of classification, we can understand why one account moved from mule account to victim account, from complicit account to unwitting account, whatever. You need to have all this perfectly visible and accessible into the platform, so that whenever someone asks why you did this, you can say because this, and that happened. So counting on everything together, we are supervising, we are simulating what's happening, and finally, we are also auditing and we are reviewing what we finally decided. So there is no risk once you get everything under the control.
So minimize the risk, make sure it's explainable for all the auditors and everybody else out there that want to see the trail. So just to wrap things up, you've come a long way since the beginning of the company with the technology that we have. Where do you see this progressing over the next couple of years?
That's cool, because I think that I cannot answer this question without understanding that, or without sharing with you that I feel that fraud and AI are together, let's say. I mean that. How will the tool evolve? In the same way that the fraud is evolving. Now fraud is using AI to make each business simpler, more profitable. They can launch campaigns quicker and in a more accurate way than ever. So we need to adapt to them, and we need to guarantee that everything in the platform is following let's say, the rhythm, at least following the rhythm, because otherwise we are always a step behind. And something important is also try to understand that we need to switch our mindset, to change how the fraud operators, how the fraud agents, how the people in these things are behaving, because we need to replace the operational mindset and the tactical mindset to something more strategical. And AI is needed for that. So instead of wasting time and resources just going back and forth to 20 different places, just click, 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 click. Let's try to guarantee that AI will help us to bring us the data, help us to do the research on our own, by their own. That's just the first step. So switching from something tactical to something strategical. The second thing that I think that is key is that fraud, as I said, is evolving, and systems based on events are not good enough anymore. Why? Because once you analyze an event, of course you can block the fraud, but you will fall when trying to understand what's next. You could understand what's happened. So you are kind of, as we said before, we are reacting like we were reacting when I was talking about the GPS. You are in the middle of traffic jam. What if you could predict that you will be in a traffic jam in 5 minutes? We designed the platform counting on being predictive, and trying to predict the fraud. And this is something that we need to change in our mind. We cannot keep just making decisions based on events. We need to understand how the whole account works, and we need to use AI in order to model all this information. But something that is even important is that we need to do this, understanding that the fraud and the events behind the fraud is not just isolated events. I mean that fraud is just the peak of an iceberg. There is a let's say, massive ecosystem behind, and we need to understand that whenever there is one account that is a mule account, it's not something that is in the middle of the desert alone. No, it's part of a network. So we need to start thinking with this network in mind. So trying to connect the dots, trying to guarantee that the large account modeling is not just something that you will put in place in one specific customer or in one specific place to understand what's happening in this region. No, you need to have a wider view. You need to go through this approach in which the network is, let's say, feeding the system, is understanding what's happening through millions of accounts, is understanding what's different and how the customers in one specific region, how the fraudsters in another specific region are behaving. So you can start trying to, as I said, build the story behind the fraud. So not just making decisions and saying, hey, I'm good, there was a fraud, I was able to detect it. Once the fraud is changing, the technique or whatever, you are again lost. You need to wait to retrain. No, you need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to anticipate what's happening. And this is just possible if you are counting on these AI tools that will help you to try to again, build this account intelligence to make decisions faster than ever and to make decisions better than ever. So it's not just about improving false positives rate, as we are saying, adding AI on top. It's about changing and having better signals, for example. And better signals means design all the system from the scratch with a different perspective. And this is how I see AI impacting Acoru in the next few years. So increasing and expanding the large account model to the whole network via the consortium. So all the customers are helping to add intel into the system. So they are also taking advantage on the system to guarantee that we reduce the operational cost. So the time to detection, the time to value is better than ever. So they can invest time and efforts doing better researches. So understanding better how the fraud, how the account behaves, and being able to make decisions like this is not about this specific event, but it's about that I don't want to have this account into my system. Why? Because maybe tomorrow, not today, but maybe tomorrow, this is not the kind of behaviors that I would like to have.
Terrific insight. So it looks like we're, as usual, in the middle of another arms race. This with the AI, good guys versus bad guys. Mm-hmm. But in our situation, it really appears that Acoru's got a great way to approach this from a ground-up perspective that allows us to both catch the scams as they're happening and also to detect the networks that are so important to cashing out of what the scams do. So terrific. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.